In September 2020, the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism introduced the new implementation protocols for the International Tourism Revival Initiative. The implementation protocols aim to get the critical tourism and hospitality sector back up and running by putting in place necessary measures and good practices to regulate the sector in the context of COVID-19. Now, the implementation protocols further seek to ensure that international tourists are still able to visit Namibia without compromising the public health of Namibians or that of themselves. A very good evening and a warm welcome to this evening's edition of our COVID-19 update. My name is Denver Sting. Unfortunately, we do not have a sign language interpreter this evening. Now, tonight we take stock of the strides and challenges experienced in the rollout and the execution of the International Tourism Revival Initiative in mitigation to COVID-19, the pandemic. Joining me to discuss this very important topic are Mr. Bamba Shifeta, the Minister of Environment, Forestry and Tourism. Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here.
We're also joined this evening by Dr. Matthias Kwangwama, the MD of Namibia Wildlife Resorts, NWR. Good evening, doctor, and welcome.
Good evening. Happy to be here.
We're also joined this evening by Ms. Gita Petzold, Chief Executive Officer of the Hospitality Association of Namibia. Good evening, ma'am, and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Hi.
Joining us in studio also this evening is Mr. Gys Huber, the Managing Director of Gondwana Collection, Namibia. Good evening, sir, and welcome to you.
Thank you, Denver. Good to be here.
Honourable Minister, let's please get straight into it, and I'd like to start with you, please. The Tourism Revival Initiative was launched exactly 6 months ago on the 1st of September 2020. How successful has the initiative been in the past 6 months?
We can say the Revival Initiative was successful in the sense that we have received tourists after we opened the borders. Every flight that arrived in Namibia had a number of tourists. And also that we have learned to cope with the situation, how we can regulate those visitors coming here, their movements and so on, and also making sure that they are safe, and also the nationals or the residents and the nationals are safe. We have to say that it was a successful trial, although it's not really, the number of tourists we receive is not the number that we normally use to receive. It's a moderate number to receive.
Very well. Doctor, having heard the Minister refer to the initiative and the first 6 months in particular as successful based on our ability to cope with the protocols, but also having indeed received a number of tourists, do you concur that thus far the initiative was successful?
Yeah, I do concur that the initiative was successful, but maybe the question is to what extent it was successful. I think if you are looking at that you are comparing to the previous years, it's not comparable. But if you're comparing that you had at least some visitors coming from outside, then it was successful. And I think that is what we are looking for, at least if we can just get some visitors from outside to come to us, that gives a hope to everybody. And from that context, I will say it is successful. And also the other element to consider is that the people who are coming to us, they will go out and spread the word about how well are we prepared in terms of coping with this pandemic. So that is also a good advertising for us in promoting Namibia, how well we are prepared for COVID.
If we compare the past 6 months with the corresponding previous period, are we really comparing apples to apples in light of the current situation? Is it fair to compare the two even?
We cannot compare it because COVID really is a international incident in living memory which was never seen before. So from that aspect, we cannot even start to compare with the previous years. But we have to use the experience of what happened in this current environment and try to see how successful we were. But definitely it is really not comparable. We must not compare because nobody has seen COVID-19 before.
Very well. Ms. Petzold, are you of the view that the Tourism Revival Initiative was successful for the past 6 months? And if yes, what do you attribute that success to?
Well, we can't compare figures like Dr. Matthias has just said to previous years, obviously, because this is a very, very new situation for us all. But I would like to compare ourselves to other countries in the world. And if you just look across to the European continent, their places are still closed. Their restaurants are closed. They're trying to open them up now. While Namibia has actually went through a trial phase. We were very quick to lock down, which some people claim might have been too early. But then we started preparing, and we actually opened up our market to the local market already as way back as May. And then in June, we got the restaurants going. So by the time that we had the Tourism Revival Initiative launched by the Ministry for International Travel to return, and we saw the first flights of Eurowings and Ethiopian Airways come to our shores, there was a certain level of practice already. We used our Namibian travelers to ascertain whether our protocols in terms of social distancing and wearing of masks, which I'm still struggling with, and the hygiene that we put in place was actually working, and it was found to be very practical and very successful. We also had feedbacks from the international community that they said they were actually quite surprised in the extent to which Namibia actually rolled out those protocols. And many of those people, and there were not too many, we would have loved to have double the number comparing to previous years. Currently, the 2020 year ended with an occupancy of 16%, where we used to have 60. So it's difficult to compare, but at least those people that have come, some of them have actually requested extension of stay. And like Dr. Matthias was saying, they would have gone back to say, wow, you know, Namibia is a country to visit because of our wide open spaces and the safety we provide. In that term, it was successful, but we need to build on it.
Is it fair to state that in as much as we're able to execute and implement those protocols, those do not necessarily translate into tourism figures going up?
Very true, because in as much as what we do here in Namibia would work for us and we can shout it out to the world, we've seen, especially now in December, where the world has taken certain decisions and steps for their own. People calling on extensive travel restrictions to certain countries, and Namibia was then categorized as high risk because of COVID figures. And although we would have been able to tell them, listen here, if you go into a tourism establishment somewhere out in the remote areas, there is no or a little risk of catching COVID. That decision was not taken by us, it was taken by the international community. So we're very dependent on what happens elsewhere to be able to reap some of the successes that we have worked for.
Thank you very much. Ms. Iber, what is your take on the success or otherwise of the Tourism Revival Initiative thus far?
So, Daniel, I think it has been said. I completely agree that our government has given us a fighting chance. Namibia is open, Namibia is safe. So we are deeply grateful to our government, to do and to open us in terms of what's under our control. But to your question, to Gita as well, not everything is under our control. What's happening in our source markets is not up to us. It's not up to our government, and that's had a detrimental impact on us. So, in terms of as far as what we could have done, we are grateful to government, and also this can have a long-term positive impact on us because we are open, other countries are not. But in terms of translating to the numbers, like Matthias said, unfortunately, it's not there.
Being mindful that we do not have any control about what's happening in these source markets, what are we able to do as far as that situation is concerned?
So I think there's a couple of things. First of all is that we maintain our world-class standards in terms of both the tourism product, but especially in terms of the COVID protocol. Like Gita said, we get very positive feedback from our international visitors that they feel safe in Namibia. They feel it is professional. They feel it's hygienic. So that we must maintain. And then just spread the word. Tourism is everybody's business. We must all promote our country. We must remind and tell the world that we are open and we are safe.
Very well. We've been joined in the meantime by Mr. Joseph Kafunda, MD of the Emerging Tourism Enterprise Association. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us. What do you make of the success or otherwise of the Tourism Revival Initiative thus far?
As far as we are, the Tourism Revival is a very, very good initiative, and we should be able to applaud the people who came up with the Tourism Revival Initiative. at the same time, besides the challenges, like Kais just said, we cannot be able to control the markets or the source markets because we have made all the plans, we have made all the arrangements, but at the same time, we are facing challenge from the source market because they are the one who's deciding if they should come or they shouldn't come. But so far, a very, very good initiative that was initiated with the tourism revival.
Thank you very much. Mr. Minister, there is consensus that indeed there was a measure of success relating to the Tourism Revival Initiative. From your ministry's perspective, which are the key challenges that you are experiencing in fully implementing and rolling out the initiative? And at the same time, what are you doing to address those?
One of those challenges, of course, some of our major source markets are closed, and that has been our challenge, one of our challenges. And another one is that you have to come up with another way of living, especially the infrastructure and the facilities in hospitality and tourism industry. You have to adjust. We have to adjust. You have some smaller places. You have to make sure that people cannot social distancing or physical distancing. Sometimes you have to make sure that people cannot gather at the same place, number of people, more than number that is required or desired by the protocol and the regulation. So those are some of our challenges. But apart from those challenges, when you have challenges, you also have opportunities. And those are the opportunities that avail to us is to make sure that we learn a lesson from this. And in the future, we'll be able to take that as a takeaway, and also be able to come up with strategies. That's why, in conjunction with the UNDP, we have come up with a program to have market assessment, and in order to develop strategies, which we are going to implement comes up April this year, and that is also one of the opportunities. And also for, of course, the industry to adjust and learning from this lesson.
Speaking about that envisaged market assessment and adjustments that we need to implement, now that we do know that there are inherent limitations as far as our source markets are concerned, what is the possibility of us exploring alternative source markets?
At this time, most of the even potential market is closed. We have a little chance to succeed in that. We hope that most of this market will open. Once they open, Namibia is open. Namibia is here saying, come. We are ready to receive you, our facilities, and all infrastructures are adjusted to make sure that when visitors come here, they are safe, and also our residents and the nationals are safe in Namibia.
Doctor, so we do know that there are limitations linked to the existing source markets, and as the Minister just informed us, as far as the potential markets are concerned, they're also closed at the moment. Which are the other challenges that we're experiencing, particularly locally, as far as implementing the protocols are concerned?
Yeah, I think locally as well as internationally, one of the challenges that, tourism is about the movement of people. Because it is about movement of people, you need to give that security. That if somebody leaves his or her home to go to a tourist establishment, that the health and safety there is really assured. So that is really also one of the challenge, because it's really to do also with the mind. That because of this pandemic, if I have to leave my country to travel somewhere, is it not working against my health? So we have to do more to be able to convince people. Even the one who are domestically here, convince them that, like my colleagues have said, that the tourism establishments are really safe. We are trying to give that message, and practically we are demonstrating it in terms of putting up the measures and so on. But it is not easy to believe. We have to do more, really, to convince people that when we say it is safe, it is safe. So that is one of the challenges.
Dr. Mattia, seeing that you do have the floor at the moment, let's talk about the operational status quo of NWR. What does it look like at the moment?
Yeah, you must know that currently, even traditionally, we are what is called a low season. Now, a low season in a COVID period, you can imagine how it looked like. I think it's even more worse. But it's not to say that there is nothing happening. I think in terms of hours, I think you are averaging about 8% occupancy. And this is more during over the weekends. That is when we are seeing that Namibians still do travel over weekends and so on. And that is what is keeping us busy. But those will be at the popular destinations. But some destinations which are not so popular is really quiet. It's almost nothing happening there. But I think the message we're saying is that at least tourism is not to say that everything is dead. There is at least movement. It's not enough to keep a company afloat, but at least there is life going on. And that is what we really need, the hope to continue fighting maybe until situation improves.
Yes, Ms. Petzold, if we know that Namibia as a destination is safe, but we do know that we need to do more to spread that message, what is it that the Hospitality Association of Namibia does to help promote and inform the world about how safe Namibia is?
Denver, I must admit that that was throughout the last 11 months our key challenge, our key problem, is that communication and the spreading of messages. Because not only Namibia, but the whole world was relying on a very new stream of information and decision-making where, in the past, we in the tourism sector would talk amongst one another and devise plans and put products in place and shout it out to the market. Now we always had to double-check against immigration controls, against health regulations, against bilateral relations. So the whole team has gotten bigger, and that's why we're so glad that the ministry actually did take the initiative to put together the team. We call it the Tourism Task Force that rides the Tourism Revival Initiative, so that in one room or at one point we have all those decision makers that currently have effect on our tourism industry together. And we started off with very good momentum, and we had daily and later weekly interludes with that team. I must admit that we seem to have lost some of the momentum because everybody was trying to just roll out the initial phase. We need to get back to that, and what is key to me now is that we need to have that national message sounded out that Namibia is safe. Like Dr. Mattia said, we have proven it. Some people have come and tested it. We had guinea pigs, like you would call them. But it would be so nice if we had a national message sound out to the world, to put Namibia on the map, to say, listen here, we've been open for 6 months now. This is our experience, and either the minister or even our president were to sound out that message of welcoming people to the wide open spaces of Namibia. I think that is key at the moment, because communication is key.
Hearing you concede that the Tourism Task Force has indeed lost some momentum and you need to revive that momentum, how will you go about doing that?
Engagement, raising issues, and it so happens that we always have issues to raise, and sometimes I feel like I'm a spoiled child, and when we get one sweetie, I want two. It so happened that at a fight, and by basically sharing naked facts in terms of where we are with the financial status of some of our properties, some of my members were pleading for some relief on the COVID curfew and other restrictions in terms of, operating after 8 o'clock at night and operating on Sundays. Now, we have full understanding for some of the decisions that were taken, but it has come to a point where we said every single little bit helps, and, to have a good wining and dining experience on Sundays, which is the most popular family day, would put extra dollars into the cashier of a restaurant or a hotel, and that little bit would help. And, we in trying to convince government that we are ready to actually take responsibility for the safety by having all the protocols in place. We got that grant last week that hotels and casinos were able to serve their in-house clients because we didn't want too much public movement after 8. But that got the restaurant fraternity upset because they say, what's the difference of me drinking a beer in a restaurant or at a hotel restaurant at the same time? So, every bit helps, and the restaurants are just as in dire straits as the accommodation industry. So we would need to work together in terms of getting a fair playing field and, allowing us to operate. We've said that already in I think in May, June, when we realized that although tourism was ranked very high in terms of the stimulus package that was promised, we do realize and have full understanding that government doesn't have the financial means to dish it out like some other countries do. But we said, just allow us to operate. We take responsibility. I think Namibia was one of the first countries that rolled out those tourism protocols, showing our commitment and our responsibility to do it safely.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Barrett, from your perspective, let's please also take stock of your operational setup at Gondwana. What does it look like?
So Denver, we've been lucky. We right in the beginning we made a decision that we will hold on to our people. It is in terms of our ethos, in terms of our values, and we've done that. And because of that, we are ready to serve our people. But in terms of the challenges around that, our people are struggling. We all had to give up a lot of benefits and salary pay cuts and all those things, and people are not blind to the reality. Like Dr. Matthias said, you might have some occupancies over weekends. During the week, it is dire. And the mental stress on people, the fatigue, it's been 12 months now, and it's difficult to manage that.
How much longer will we be able to hang on?
Not much longer. We cannot, we're on an unsustainable path. We cannot hold on much longer. That is simply the fact.
Mr. Kafunda, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Bearing in mind the challenges that you also referred to relating to our source markets, has the domestic situation improved?
To be honest, I've seen a couple of improvements, but it's not that enough. We should be able to see more improvement so that we can revive or we can have our tourism back. So far, the improvement has been there, but we cannot see the differences because it's quite minimal.
What is the type of input that you'd like to see, Mr. Kafunda?
The type of input that I would like to see is that during this unprecedented time, that a lot of opportunity have been given to those who didn't have the opportunities. And the lack of education of people that didn't understand the principle or the business principles of tourism, if they can also be given an opportunity. We do have, like I represent the Emerging Tourism Enterprise Association, we are an inclusive association that we cater for almost everybody in Namibia. But during this tough time, we have not get enough support. We have not get enough attention that we needed to be given as a sector or as a representation of this great tourism industry. We do have majority of our members are tour guides as well and tour operators, guest houses. They have been tremendously being let down by the decision that have been taken or the decision that have been made in this country. And I thought, as a chairperson, I should be able, especially for the tour guides. Tour guides, we have quite a huge number of tour guides that needed and still continue need the support. And we have not get that support for them. And we have little guest house that you find in a little background of a little small village like this, for instance, a big town like Utapi, guest houses are closing. You have guest houses in Windhoek that are closing just because they are not been given enough attention. They are not motivated enough. So if we can create motivational support kind of groups that we can support our people and tell them that this was a pandemic, but you can be able to revive after the pandemic. We need to create that tourism resilience among our people.
Thank you,
and
sir.
among those in the tourism industry.
Thank you very much. Should you want to participate in tonight's very important conversation, if you have a question for one of the panelists in studio, the number to dial is 061 291 3339. 061 291 3339. Please remember to switch off your television set or your radio to avoid any confusion. Mr. Minister, before we proceed, I'd like to gauge your take on what Ms. Petzel shared with us in terms of the calls from the association and their members to adjust the curfew and that they prepare to accept responsibility. And she did say, and we do know that from the latest set of regulations, that these calls were partially heeded as far as those relate to hotels and the restaurants at hotels. But the rest of the restaurant industry, she said, is up in arms because they're bearing the brunt of these continued regulations that do not accommodate them.
Yes, I think that is our wish and desire, that the curfew is not there. We need to get rid of the curfew, but given the situation now, in the midst of this COVID pandemic, what the Minister of Health and Social Services is trying to do is to minimize the incidences of COVID infection. And we are trying to come there, looking at observing cases, the behavior of this pandemic, and accordingly we'll be able to adjust. And I think in the next, it depends on what will happen now, and also cases, that incidences in the country, I think we will be able to adjust that. But also here you have to make sure that you have two issues here to what are competing. That is now health issues, the importance of health issue, and the vis-a-vis livelihood. And we as a ministry responsible for the industry, tourism and hospitality, we need to also listen to what are the sector, health sector, is telling us, because they have expertise to look at, to have a microscope, and with that, applying some science and able to advise us which measures we have to take next. But I can assure you that with all these cases being minimized, we'll definitely adjust that, and the curfew, maybe see how we can do it. That's our desire, but we will get there.
We also heard Mr. Hubash say that the industry is not going to be able to hold on much longer. We heard Mr. Kafunda say that from the perspective of these association, the smaller entities do not get sufficient attention in terms of motivation. What do you make of that?
Yes, I understand that. And as I said, our wishes and desires to have the tourism comes on the rail. And we are doing all efforts we are able to undertake in order to have that on the rail. As I said, it is not our wish that things should be like this on the stage where we are now. At this stage, we are trying to make sure that the infection does not escalate. It's manageable. And they will be able to have health not burdened by cases, too many cases, and then it will be again a crisis. We don't want to get into a really serious crisis, health crisis, and then it will result into trade restrictions again. So we are trying to see how we can balance. It's a kind of creating equilibrium between health issues, measures, and also the livelihood.
And it's not an easy balance to strike.
It is not. It is not at all.
Yeah.
And we are trying. Other countries close completely. We are trying to do that. And as long as people behave, especially clients in the industry, they should understand this. And that's why sometimes it's very difficult to open bars until late, because when people get intoxicated, they behave differently. They underestimate dangers.
Including the pandemic.
That's human. Including the pandemic. A person who is intoxicated, that means the faculty is, sometimes not working properly.
Thank you.
You can even jump in the river where there's a crocodile, wanting to wrestle with the crocodile. So, therefore, you understand that what the authority is trying to do is to try to minimize the infection in the country.
061-291-3339 if you want to participate in tonight's conversation. Doctor, please share some of the internal business revival strategies that you've embarked upon to survive amidst these troublesome and turbulent times.
I think anyone who runs business in this era is really about thinking what to do. Every time occupied, what is next? What if this happened? What must be done? I think that is the question which faces you. Now, in terms of the strategies, really more to do with coming up with different product options to the people. Maybe those products which can be able to sell very well to the people. That is what we try to come up with. And this specifically relates to coming up products like maybe, for example, like tour packages. That we can be able to come up with a customized tour package program that if you Denver maybe want to tour a certain part of Namibia, we can customize that for you and sell it for you. Or maybe a group of people who have never been in Etosha, we can create a tour package for them. So this is kind of like product variety. That is what we have been trying to do. Of course, also then to do with also enticing the domestic market largely, because that is actually the option we have.
How are we faring in terms of enticing the domestic market?
Yeah, I have to say that almost 12 months down the line, it's almost a miracle that we are at this stage, as companies able to still try to make a living and so on. And this is largely have to do with the support which we got from the Namibians, really. And from that point of view, I think there has been sensitization to the Namibians. Those who didn't have maybe opportunity, or those who were not willing to travel before, had now this opportunity to travel through spreading out the message and so on. And we have seen that at certain stages, like when you come to special events like long weekends or festive seasons, really there was support there. So from that point of view, I can say that, yeah, we have made progress in terms of reaching out to the domestic market.
Thank you, Doctor. Ms. Petzold, Dr. Matthias is saying that we have made progress in terms of enticing the domestic market. Is that also your view?
Definitely. I mean, on the one side, the tourism industry was generous enough, despite the hardship that we're facing financially, to put specials out in the market that have never been seen, because we know that Namibians don't work around with lots of cash. So there were lots of very good specials. That comes at a price of tourism operations, I must admit. But
help us understand that in layman's terms, that these specials, these packages that are crafted to entice the local market also comes at the price for the operators?
Well, to be honest, some of the prices that were offered to the local market were under operational costs. So basically it cost the hotel or the lodge or the guest house more to put out that service, to treat the guests, to put out breakfast, than they actually got in price. And NWR is one example, but there are many private sector people that also put amazing specials in place, because we know that our people don't have that kind of cash. Beneficial is the fact that many of the Namibians now really got to know their country and fell in love with it. So we hope that that will convert them into tourism promotional ambassadors. Namibia also did wonders last year in terms of its natural beautification. You know, we had an amazing year last year where, you know, people had scenes of wildlife, 100 elephants to one car sort of thing, and unforeseen or unheard of incidents in the past, because, you know, usually in the Toshapan at high season you'd have 30 cars vie for one sighting of elephants or lion. It was the opposite last year. So those people that traveled last year were lucky enough. And then at the beginning of this year, we'll look how our country turned out to be as green as ever. So those kind of extra attractions actually entice our Namibian people to also travel and experience and fall in love with their own country. And I'm really hoping that that is the investment that we all would have made to be able to mark out our country much, much stronger. I see all the social media posts, and every little bit helps. We're actually making people envious of the opportunity that we have. And I've heard it very often that people say, wow, count yourself lucky because you can still move in your country. We hope that many people will have made use of that opportunity and entice their friends across the borders to do the same when the borders really open and tourism flow in.
What have we seen from our neighboring country, South Africa, thus far?
It is a challenge. South Africa is a good market for us. I mean, it's always been the third strongest, apart from the European market. And we've had challenges because of the border closures, South Africa just closing all the borders late last year. So we've lost a lot of the Christmas market that we used to have with South Africans coming to fish and to camp. They are slowly but surely coming back. What is a bit of a concern is that there's always this lack of consistent information and regular updates in terms of what rules go for which country, and do we need a 72-hour test, or would it be a 7-day test? So clarity in terms of the communication, and I would also lament that we haven't done enough in terms of the regional coordination of travel.
Thank you, Ms.
So it's not South Africa, it's Botswana and Zambia that we want to come back to Namibia as well.
We unfortunately ran out of time. We will need to have a follow-up on this conversation because it's so important and we have just started. Mr. Kafunda has also joined us on the line again. Sir, your concluding remarks this evening, please. Mr. Kafunda?
Yes, sir.
We've run out of time. Your brief concluding remarks this evening, please.
My brief remarks for this evening is that I will call once again for a roundtable meeting between the stakeholders, both government entities, private sectors, and those in a smaller, medium enterprises businesses, so that we can sit around and we work around something that is going to be called the tourism resilience. We have initiated the tourism revival. Now let's initiate the tourism resilience so that all of us, we can be part, or we can feel to be part and parcel of this good project that we have started.
Thank you very much, sir.
Very good.
Thank you very much, sir. Monsieur Hubert, your brief concluding remarks this evening, please.
Denver, we are in a dire situation. We all must pull together. I think there's another conversation that needs to be had in the future in terms of a stakeholder, the insurance companies in Namibia. Tourism companies took out business interruption insurance, and we are struggling, and that is not coming to the party. And
the business is being interrupted.
Completely, and we're facing, court applications against us, as silly as that our situation is not urgent, while we're staring down the barrel of mass retrenchments, and that is not acceptable.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Petzold?
No, I'm eternally optimistic and hopeful, but it does come at a price, and the challenges are getting tough. So I think 2021 is going to show itself with much more viciousness than 2020. Last year we were shell-shocked. This year we've realized the dilemma we're in, and we need to stand together very strongly now to get us through.
Thank you very much. Dr. Matthias, is there light at the end of the tunnel?
There should always be a light at the end of the tunnel. I think we are almost now a year into this, and it's really grateful that it's very, very difficult period, but we tried. And it's a matter just to see what lessons did we learn from the past and really practically improve going forward.
Thank you.
And also the issue of communication of all stakeholders to be on the same wavelength.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Mr. Minister, you have the brief final word this evening.
Yes, this is the time that all sectors, especially economic sectors, we need to put hands together. We need each other. We need to make sure that we do what we can to achieve our desired result. And our desired result is that because we want to have tourism on the rail, and because tourism, whatever affects tourism, it affects most of the economic sectors. The suppliers, they can't supply, some of them close because the tourism is almost half or less than half in the country. So we really need to put heads together in order to achieve our desired result.
Thank you very much, colleagues, and best of luck. Let's keep on keeping on.
Welcome.
We don't have much of an alternative.
No?
And together we remain stronger.
Exactly.
Welcome.
Fellow Namibians, remember, together we shall overcome. From all of us here at the NBC COVID-19 Update Desk, it's good night and goodbye.